Hello.
I know I'm early.
Yeah, that's fine. How are you?
Fine. I'm in New York City.
Oh, nice. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm going to walk away for a bit here. I just wanted to get on.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
See you in a bit.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's odd.
Hi, Cheryl. How are you?
Good. How are you, Susan?
Good. I just want to get the PowerPoint set up
Okay,
and
I'll
that
make
it's
you a co-host.
working. Okay, thank you.
All righty, you should be all good.
Okay, let's just test it.
Okay.
Hold on. I have to share. That looks right?
Yep.
Okay, good. So are you going to say some stuff at the top?
Yeah, it's not too much though. So yeah.
Okay, good. And is Mista here?
Misty, yeah, she's just joining now.
All right, good. So she's going to put something in the chat for me.
Okay.
So do I have, I'm a co-host. Oh, so do I have remote control too? Can you give me remote control? Or do I need it? Here, let's do that. I guess I'm okay.
Okay, perfect.
When does your presidency start?
Actually, it started October 1st.
Oh,
Me,
good.
president-elect. Yeah.
Oh, so you're president-elect for a
Yeah.
year.
Yeah, I'll be president next year. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
All righty, guys. Good afternoon. As people are steadily streaming in, I'm Cheryl Shields. I am newly appointed president-elect of ICF Chicago and super excited to move into that position as well. We welcome you today to Core Competency Call. These are really one of my favorite calls. Really, I learned so much from them, so I'm just so happy to be here with you guys today as well. Misty, are there any announcements that you would like to talk about?
Actually, the only thing is that you'll have 3 days if you're on this call to register for the call to get your CCEUs for this.
Okay, perfect. I also see Erica, our president, is on the call. Erica, do you have any announcements?
Nope, I don't. No, I don't. Thanks, Susan, for doing another year of Core Competencies. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. All right, should I take it away?
Yeah, it's all yours, Susan.
Okay, good. Okay, everybody can see my screen, right? I'm sharing.
Yes.
All right, so today we're doing the first core competency, which is demonstrates ethical practices. And I just learned something really neat in a lunch and learn that I just participated in with a much younger coach. And so I wanted to share that with you guys in terms of how to, everybody might already know this, but if you don't, just in terms of how to manage your own screen when we're sharing. So when you look at Zoom and you look in the upper right-hand corner, you can see where it says speaker view. You can click on that and you can make it either gallery or speaker. I always like gallery because I like to see. Then once you're sharing, now that I'm sharing, you'll see at the top, it says view options. If you go down on that and you click side-by-side view, right there, then what happens is the faces of everybody are next to the shared screen. And here's a really neat thing. Right between those, there's a bar and there's a little line in there. you can move that line. Here, let me go back. And you can make the screen or the faces bigger. So does everybody know that, or is that news to you? Anyway, okay, it was a cool news. Yay, okay. So I love that ever since I learned it, and I, of course, have to share it with everybody. So as we're going through this, you can make your shared screen as big as you want. Okay, now to the content. So your job is to share that with more people. All right, so last month, September was our first month that Sheila spoke, and she did an overview of the credentialing process, which is in change. You know, she's an evaluator, and there is a link here that you can watch her, that talk from last month. It's up on YouTube, and Missy's going to put it in the chat so everybody can get that link. There it is. And it's going to go up on the ICF Chicago site within the next month. But anyway, so if you are in the middle of doing credentialing and you want to listen to that call, it was wonderful. So, okay, so let's move on. So this is where the core competencies are now. There's 8, as you know. This started, I think, September 2019. So last year we focused on the 8. And that's what we're going to do again this year. This is what it used to be. It was called Meeting Ethical Guidelines and Professional Standards. And this is sort of interesting. I did it last year, and so I went and got my PowerPoint out, and it turns out they're actually very different. So we'll go through the new competency today. So first of all, the definition for demonstrates ethical practice is understands and consistently applies coaching ethics and standards to coaching. Now, I don't know if anybody else feels like this. I always think, oh, this is the most boring competency, like when I'm going to teach it or we're going to talk about it. But what I also realize is it's the most important. Like, you have to have an ethical foundation to how you operate and how in your world and in your coaching. So I think this is a foundation to the work that we do. So hopefully I can make it interesting. Last year, I thought it turned out to be an interesting conversation. We'll see about this year, because it's very dry content, I'll say. And you know what, you guys, if there's a chat that somebody's asking me a question, I've got it open, but I'm not necessarily focused on that. So if you want to stop me, say something live.
Or I can take care of that,
Okay.
Susan. I'll monitor that for you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so here is on the site, this is how they define the competency now. So you must demonstrate this to be an ethical coach, right? It's about integrity and honesty with all your clients, your sponsors, anybody who's a stakeholder. And I'm going to say it's also really for your whole life. You are a role model as a coach everywhere you go. We have to be sensitive to clients, who they are. I mean, I think that's the gift of being a coach. I mean, that's, I think, why many of us are coaches, is to really be sensitive to our clients. What are their beliefs? Who are they? But that's at the core, I think, of being an ethical coach. We have to use language that's an appropriate and respectful. You know, it's interesting. When I got certified a long time ago, I remember one teacher said, I like to cuss. And I'm not saying that, the teacher said that. I like to cuss, and I share that with my clients. And if that's going to be upsetting, I want them to know that up front. So you have to, you know, I think that's part of designing your language and designing your relationship. Abides by the code of ethics. We're going to look at the code of ethics. That's where I'm concerned. Might get a little dry, but we're going to look at the code of ethics after this. So, and probably the biggest thing is that we maintain confidentiality. no matter who our client is. And for those of you that are either internal coaches or you're hired by a company, there's a sponsor of the work. That's sort of a slippery slope that we have to navigate. So the most important thing, and this has really, I think, been shown, coaching really only works when the client can let down their hair and say whatever they think. So you have to, from the very first moment of, okay, let's talk about coaching, to even like years in, people will say to me, well, I just want to make sure that you're not going to share this with anybody. And you have to remind them, look, everything that you say is completely confidential. The only time, and this comes up in the code later, is if you are concerned about your client's safety, like you think that they would kill themselves or they would hurt somebody else, that's really the only time that you would break confidentiality in service to the client and to the world. All right, and then you maintain the distinctions between what is coaching, consulting, psychotherapy. Some people have to explain that when they start coaching, but it's very important that you're clear about that. Occasionally people wear two hats, like they might, I have a client who, she is a marketing consultant and a coach, and so she's very clear about when she's delivering either one. I have my coaching hat on, I have my marketing hat, but it's being very clear about the distinctions is critical so they know what you're doing. And the last thing is to refer clients to other professionals as appropriate. So understanding that difference between therapy and coaching is very important, and it's also important when it's time to send your client to the therapist. And what I usually think then, it's, are they continuing to work on the same thing? Like, is something making them unhappy, or that's emotionally based, maybe from their family of origin, or something I had a client one time and we kept going around and around the same issue, and we realized that it was much more deep-seated and that we were not going to get to it in coaching. And so she went and did therapy. Some people take a break, put their coaching on hold. Some people keep going. I've had a client who gave me permission. I referred him to a therapist and we had permission to connect, but you want to make sure that you're not standing in the shoes of trying to be the therapist. And if it feels heavy, exhausting, like we sort of joke and say, I feel like I need to go take a shower, you know that it's time to refer your client. So before I move forward, does anybody have any questions just in terms of the definition of demonstrates ethical practice? You can either unmute yourself or put it in the chat.
Nope.
Okay, pretty straightforward. Do I need to be waiting a minute? I think they did a nice job of cleaning them up. If you look at, I think the original core competencies were written a long time ago, and I would say the coaching profession is clear about what it is doing, and so I thought it was sort of refreshing to read these. All right.
Here's a question for you.
Yeah. Okay.
This is the bottom line of creating a strong coaching alliance.
Absolutely. I think it's the core. Like if you don't have this ethical practice and foundation with your client, I don't think that coaching works. It is, coaching creates magic, but I think we have to have that to begin with. Oops, sorry, went too far. Okay, so here's how, now we're gonna dig into the ICF Code of Ethics. So they call it the gold standard in coaching, ICF. ICF is celebrating 25 years and they have this beautiful logo now. And so the code is really setting a standard of conduct for values and ethical principles. it gives us a way to think about education for reflection, decision making. Like if you ever have to make a decision about, should I keep coaching this person or not? Like I'll give you an example. I was coaching a guy and I decided to invest in his business. And so I resigned as a coach and became an investor, right? I could not do both ethically. So the ICF will adjudicate if there's an issue. There's a ICF review board, a review process. So if there's an ethical issue, ICF will provide that for the coaches. And it provides a basis for the ICF accredited program. So if everybody is, going to ICF schools, they're embracing that. Okay, so let's go forward. So here are the definitions. I'm not going to go through all of those, but I think we all know them. What is coaching? Who's the coach? What's the relationship? What are the roles, right? We have client, sponsor, engagement, student, conflict of interest. Are there any questions on those? I don't know that we need to go through those in detail. I think the most important one where I think it gets a little dicey is when you have a corporate relationship. So a company hires you, and we call that the sponsor. And then you have a coaching client there, and then the stakeholders would be, the people that they're working with, their vendors, their peers, their direct reports. A conflict of interest might be if you have an agenda for the client. Like I have one, I'm going to tell you about it later, that I think is a little bit potentially a conflict of interest. But, the big thing that we talk about in the corporate coaching, and this is probably true for internal or external coaching, is who's the client? Is it the sponsor or the coachee? And really they're both the client, and there's different rules, right? Different roles, different rules. But if you keep confidentiality of the client and you only report out either together or with the approval of the client, you'll be in good shape. Linda, yes, this is all on the site. So if you put in ICF core competencies, code of ethics, this little beautiful chart is right there. Everything I'm doing is on the site today. Okay. All right. So the first category is responsibility to clients. So does somebody want to read that and quickly? Would they like to read that out loud?
This is Eileen. I'm happy to do it.
Okay, thanks, Eileen.
Okay. Number one, explain all the terms of the work. These are responsibility to clients. Number one, explain all the terms of the work. Number two, create a contract before you start. Number three, in bold, maintain confidentiality. Number four, have a clear understanding of how information is shared. 5, be clear in role with sponsor and client. 6, when internal coach, manage conflicts between clients and sponsors. 7, manage records with tech or not. 8, remain alert to changes in value of work and possible need for other professionals. Number 9, respect right to terminate relationship at any time subject to the agreement. 10, be sensitive to multiple contracts or relationships with client and sponsor. 11, be aware of and manage power differences. 12, disclose possible compensation that could be gained from referral to client. And 13, assure consistent quality of coaching, no matter compensation.
Thank you very much. So this is also on the site, but I will tell you that I simplified it, right? There's very long descriptions there. So, that's what we have to navigate. Does anybody have an issue right now on any of those, or does anybody have a question? I think in a lot of ways, they're pretty clear. I think the one about compensation is very important. Like if you're going to make money out of something, you want to tell your client, you want to be clean and clear.
Susan, what is managed records? What records is it being referred to?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that, Danny, because I was thinking as we went through that. So managed records means, so for example, let's say you have a contract and you say you're getting 12 hours of coaching. So in my case, I keep a spreadsheet for the date and the time, right? So I know where am I and how many hours have I delivered. Other records could be about payment. And sometimes in corporate situations now, some companies are requiring there's coaching software, right? Where you have to put in, here's when it's scheduled, here's what we delivered, here's the top thing that we're working on. So if you're doing maybe a subcontracted project for a company, they have, like I coached at Takeda for a couple of years, and they had software that I had to fill out after every session. So it could be your own, it could be the requirement of an engagement. So I would say, and then I also have a file, like for every single client, I keep an old manila file where I write down, here are the notes from the call, here's the data that I've shared with them. And so when I start the next call, I know exactly where I am. Does that give you a sense? Another question. Oh, yeah, is that good?
Yeah, cool, thanks. That's old school, those paper files, by the way.
I know. Well, you know, and some people keep it online. But so I have a couple clients where I have to write them notes. And so I will print out their notes and put it in my file. It is old school. But it's all about, like in my world, I have clients that are just monthly. And so I have one spreadsheet for that. So I know what to bill them. And then I have a corporate spreadsheet, and that is, you know, how long is the contract, where am I, and what's getting delivered every session. So so there's a couple good things about that. One, you're prepared and you know where you are. Like I always lose track, how many hours, what was the date, I like all that. The other thing is if you're going to submit to get certified through the ICF, you have to demonstrate, you know, this is how many hours I've done and here are all the clients. So I have, you know, I started coaching in 1999. I have every spreadsheet from every year that I just continue doing it, right? I use it as a billing vehicle, but I also use it to show how many hours I've coached. I don't go back and do it, but when I did apply to be an MCC, I had to show my spreadsheet of here's my 2,500 hours. Here, how long should you keep a file? You know, I don't know if there's any rules like in banking where we'd say keep stuff 7 years. I actually have every single file. So I have right here in my office, I have a file with every single active client. And then in the closet, I have banker's boxes, again, old school, but I have banker's boxes with all my previous clients. And one, I've never had to get it because there's ever been an issue. But like I just have a client right now who's active, and she was my third or fourth client when I started 20 years ago. So I'm using her file from a long time ago. So I wouldn't get rid of them, you know, unless you hate the client and you never want to see them again. That might be. I have someone who's asking for finder's fees, and they're referring clients. You're agonizing over that. Linda, will you talk and say a little bit about what's agonizing for you? Tell us, and we'll talk about it. Do you mind? Where are you? Or
Linda,
if
you're
you'd like to
muted.
have a conversation with me,
Linda.
she's muted.
She's talking.
Linda, there you are.
I got it. Okay. I don't know if it would be okay with the client. It wasn't something that was set up before the referral. It's after the fact. And it just seems, if the client said, yeah, that's okay, that's fine, I would be okay with something, but not with what she's asking for. So I kind of didn't want anybody to know who I was, but that's okay.
Well, I would say bottom line, always be as transparent as you can. Is the referral, is the client asking, I'm confused about where the payment is. Are you paying for the client a referral
No,
fee?
another coach referred me
Ah.
to the client for coaching someone. That person did not select me, but another person in the organization did. So after the referral was already made, the person is asking for an ongoing referral fee
Oh,
with no end date.
yeah. That's a little strange because your pricing that you gave was based on not having a referral fee, right? So that's a little frustrating, right? But
Partly that, but it's like, A, we didn't agree to anything. B, this is a different person. This person did not refer me to the second person. Someone in the organization that I met through the first referral referred me to the second person. So it gets even more complicated.
yeah.
And not only are they asking for a fee for that person, but for any business at all that comes from that organization or anyone that organization refers me to in the future.
That's slippery. You know what, Jackie? I see that you're on the call. Have you ever dealt with that? I try to avoid those kind of relationships.
I try to
You
avoid
wanna
that
speak
too.
up?
And I didn't have an
Right.
agreement beforehand, so I'm kind of like, I just want to run, you know.
Right, yeah, I'm on the call.
Hi, Jackie.
Hi,
Jackie's a
Linda,
friend
how
of
are you?
mine. Good.
Yeah, Linda and I met ages ago as well. So I think I might know Linda almost as long as I've known you, Susan. So here's what I would say. It hasn't happened to me in a coaching relationship, I'll say that, but it has happened to me at other times where somebody invited me to an event. I go to the event and I win a client, a consulting client, and then this person demands a fee, a finder's fee, consulting fee. So I think it is a little strange. In that case, what I did was I said, look, we didn't discuss this ahead of time. You invited me to an event, and I met somebody at an event. However, as a courtesy, I gave her a small amount of money as a courtesy, just because it's a small world we live in, and you don't like to have enemies in your wake.
Right. I don't want to create enemies.
But I think you also don't want to be like, like you didn't ask for this. That was never discussed. It's not very professional to expect a payment after the fact. But I know other people who've been in those situations and they have paid it as a way because they thought the person could send them clients. So I think back to this whole discussion about ethics, I think it is a tough situation in that does your client that you're working with now know about this person asking for a fee?
I doubt it.
Yeah. So I think that's probably something you could include in your conversation with them. It's like, you're not comfortable right now going back to the client organization and discussing this financial situation because it wasn't set as a relationship as at the beginning, and that possibly they wouldn't be comfortable with it either. So in other words, one possible move would be to say, look, this was never an agreement. We never had an agreement like this. And now I'm working with the client, it's already in process. I would feel like I need to discuss this with the client and discuss your expectation. I don't think that would be good for you or me. So here's what I'm willing to do, if you are willing to do, or just say no. I mean, so that would be my thinking about it.
Right.
But I've got other
part of it-
colleagues where they were told that in the elevator going up to the meeting or on the elevator going down from the meeting or something.
You know, Linda, is that helpful?
It is. The other part of it is they're a highly regulated federal agency, and whenever I've signed contracts for some of them, not this particular one, they have a non-collusion agreement. So to me, that would preclude any other kinds of payments for work referral. Now, they say that I have to abide by their rules, but I keep asking for copies of their rules and they're not sending them to me. So that's the other side of it, is that it actually could be illegal or against the rules of the organization. So one thing I thought of doing was asking the, I have asked for one of the lawyers that I could speak to in the event that I had any questions, not letting any of my contacts know that.
Right. Lori just posted, it seems like you need an attorney, right? Like just to make sure, even your own
spend
attorney.
thousands of dollars on an attorney. I just spent $10,000 getting certified. I can't do that.
Right, you can ask the organization. So here, let me just say big picture. I mean, Jackie and I can talk to you guys, Linda, separately. It sounds a little challenging.
It's complicated.
Here's one thing I do. It's very complicated, but I would just say in general, what I do when anybody says to me, here's a referral, I always ask them, do you want a fee? Right then, as soon as that, right? So then I know my pricing, like either I'm going to put 10% up, then I would discuss it. What I find in like 90% of the time, people say no, they don't. They just like, we just want, I'm not the right coach, or for whatever reason, this doesn't interest me. But I always say that before I even have a conversation or I go to cost it out. So I know what the deal is financially. Like that's crappy what's going on there, Linda. That, and like some people, it's interesting, you have to discuss it because, you know, maybe the referral fee is 10% for the first amount of work, and then the next, any work that comes out of that could be at 5%. It could be for 1 year. It could be for 3 years. Right. But,
yeah, I would never agree to that, but.
Right. Well, or do what Jackie did is, you know, just send them like, here's an acknowledgement. You know, one thing I have done, well, like if people say, I don't want a referral fee, I might just send them a gift. Like I've sent people a thing of oranges or a subscription to a magazine to say, hey, I really appreciate this. Right. Because what do we want is referrals.
But see,
All
the
right,
problem, I don't have a problem with that. The problem is it could be against the rules of the client. That's what I'm most concerned with.
Right. The fact that you're in a really regulated company is important. Okay, Douglas makes a comment about, of course, about notes. And I think that's your personal preference if you want to have notes or not. You know, you're concerned that they're going to be subpoenaed. I'm at the point, maybe because I'm 63, I have to have my notes. Like I want to write down, like what are they working on and what's their homework. So the next time I know exactly what to ask them about. And I've always done that, but I always laugh. Like if somebody came and got subpoenaed my notes, they look like chicken scratch, right? But I think that's personal preference if you want to keep notes. Oh, Dale says therapists keep notes for 7 years, which is like the banking. Okay, let's move forward. So the next section is about the ethical standards, about practice and performance. Will somebody read those out loud?
I'll read them.
Anybody? Okay, great.
14, adheres to ICF codes of ethics, refers issues to ICF Global for resolution. 15, requires adherence to code by all support staff. 16, commit to excellence. 17, recognizes limitations and seeks support when needed. 18, resolves conflict, gets professional help if needed. And 19, maintains privacy of ICF members, including their contact information.
Thank you, Cheryl. So the one that sort of stands out to me, and we'll talk about it, let's hear other people's, but the one that I think that I resonate with the most and probably have used the most over the years is when I need help, right? So whether I call a therapist / coach or a therapist, like that's one place where I feel like sometimes it gets muddy. That's really important. I wouldn't necessarily tell my client, but I would think, okay, I need a discussion. Like for a long time, my coach was a therapist and a coach. He was a very seasoned executive coach, and I loved it. We didn't do supervision, but I vetted many clients with her in terms of here's what's going on, here's what I'm thinking about, can I discuss that with you? So I think that is, whether it's, you know, recognizing your own limitations as you become a better coach. Like I think over time, maybe you need that less as you get more experience, but I think in the early years, it's really nice to have a mentor coach or somebody who's more experienced than you are to help you. Even in selling, like I would say, here's the opportunity, let me talk about this, here's what I'm thinking. What about, does anybody else have any comments or thoughts about the responsibility to your practice and to your performance? Obviously, we're going to commit to excellence. That's our goal.
That same one stood out. Sorry.
Wait, go ahead, Danny. What were you saying?
That same one stood out to me, and I think that it's like we're recognizing limitations in ourselves all the time, and you know, so the question is when to seek that support. And I think your commentary makes me think, you know, if you think you need it, at least seek it out and go from there versus holding back.
Yeah, I think that's really good. Really good. Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, so I'd like to know about, this has been on my mind a lot lately. When you're seeking support as a coach and you want to talk to another coach about a coachee and how the confidentiality comes up. And I think in our contracts, we say something like we may talk to other coaches in trying to keep the person anonymous. But I feel like that's hard sometimes. That's really hard. So I would love to know if other coaches, I think there's huge value. And as a coach, when I'm struggling and being able to talk to another coach about that, almost being coached on my coachee, how am I viewing them? I've had some of the biggest jumps in my coaching competencies by being able to talk to another coach. Almost to the regard that I almost want to like get rid of confidentiality in our contracts and say, we will talk. I have a group of 4 coaches that I work with a lot and say, we will talk about you in an effort to serve you the best. So I would love to know if any other coaches or people have had kind of that balance between confidentiality and wanting to, and especially in tougher situations with coachees, talk to other coaches, you know, and what is known or in the contract about how confidential you keep that person's stuff. So does my question make sense?
Let's throw that open, Brian. That's great. Let's throw that open. Does anybody have a comment from your perspective when you discuss other clients, or, you know, you discuss your clients in terms of supporting them?
I have a thought about that. This is Anna Maria. So I don't know that this is the right thing. So maybe you might even have some guidance for me, but typically, if I'm going to do something that is outside of the conventional confidentiality agreement, I feel like it's okay as long as the client signs off on it. So for example, I had a teenage client. Well, she wasn't a teenager. She was 18 years old. I told her that everything between us was confidential, unless I thought she was going to do harm to herself. Then I was going to tell her mother. And that was the agreement. So I said, okay, so if you have any plans of hurting yourself or causing harm, don't tell me. Don't let me know, because I'll tell your mother. So, but as long as it's signed off on in the contract and the client agrees to it, I thought that's, fair.
Right. And that meets the ethical standards of if somebody's going to hurt themselves, you're going to report it, right? Whether it's their mother or the police or somebody else. What I was thinking is two thoughts about that. Number one, if you have to have permission from your client if you're doing supervision and you're going to record them, right? So if you're in school and you have a supervisor, you have to say, can I share this with a supervisor?
Susan,
My other
they
thought,
share the content of the coaching?
yeah. So if you say, I'm in supervision, can I have permission to record our call and share it with my supervisor?
Okay.
And they would say yes or no, right? Because then your supervisor is going to hear their call. And you know what? The supervisor is not interested in the person. The supervisor is interested in your coaching skills, right? Like if you're in a school that does that. What I'm thinking, and I don't know, I mean, I'd sort of love to hear other people's opinion. If I go and I call somebody and say, hey, I need to talk through this, or I'm in my coaching group, like Brian was saying, I've got a client that's challenging. I would not ask for permission. I would not give their name. I would only give, here's what's happening. Here's what I need some support on. I think that is maintaining their confidentiality, and you don't need to say, hey, this is Brian and this is his job. Does that make sense,
Right.
Brian?
It does. Well, what I'm saying, though, is on my team, there's 4 of us, and we are intimately involved in making sales and getting clients. And it's really hard to maintain. Even if I talk anonymously, the person may very well know who that is. And then I feel like I've broken confidentiality, at that point.
I
So
see.
it's almost like I feel like I would go out to an outside coach and keep it anonymous, but that's not really, I would rather actually have it. And I just want to know what people think. I'd rather have it almost like, hey, we keep things confidential, but then maybe after 3 or 4 calls, tell every one of my clients, hey, I just want to let you know, to support you, we have a policy of,
Right.
we do talk.
I would make that part of the relationship up front, that in support of you, like, I have worked on teams where a bunch of us are coaching a bunch of people, like that will vet themes, but we won't necessarily say, here's what's going on. Or if somebody's hired me to coach Joe Schmo and I need help on Joe Schmo, I might go say, can I talk to you about this client? You have to pay attention to like what feels like within you is being ethical. Like if it's clearly in service of the client, and you've said, hey, this whole team is working to support you. Like when I'm working with I do a bunch of work with one other coach, we absolutely will discuss what's going on in service of them. And we're maintaining confidentiality. All right, you know what? I can tell I need to go forward because responsibility to professionalism. You know what? Let's just read that. We don't need to read it out loud, and then we'll see if there's anything that we want to discuss here. So key here is boundaries, right? Know your roles. That's a big deal. I love 24. I don't fall in love with your client. I do know somebody who she fell in love with her client and they stopped the relationship and did get married. that does happen. And I mentioned to you that I stopped being a coach and became an investor, which I'm sorry I did now. I lost a lot of money. make sure everything you say is true about that's sort of funny to me, what ICF offers and the potential of coaching. So when you're, explaining or in the relationship, you want to be very realistic. Are there any questions or thoughts on this one? Any concerns? Oh, okay. Linda says, what about coaching friends? In school, coaching school, basically the rule is don't do it. And I think if anybody's done it, you sort of learned. You can't coach, you really shouldn't coach your friends, and you shouldn't coach your family because you're attached. You got to be really honest. Very difficult to not be attached. Like what I do in that case is I refer them to a coaching friend. Somebody else who's a coach. Like even if I'm in a mastermind group across different businesses, I don't want to coach anybody in there. I refer them because I don't want to know. I'm going to know them intimately. I do not want to know that. I want somebody else to coach them.
When I was at CTI, they encouraged us to even coach, people if we had in the training, if we had to before our next class to get a family member. So I did it as practice, but I wouldn't do it for my practice. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, you don't want to pay them. Okay, or have them pay you. Right, to do that free, okay, I'm learning a skill tonight. Can I do this? I think that's fun. And I've done that with friends. But, you want to be the coach and you want to be free to be of service. You don't want to be sitting down at dinner with that person, right? All right, so I think this is the last one, which is responsibility to society. So we want to avoid discrimination. We want to recognize the contributions and IP of others, right? We want to work with scientific standards within the boundaries of our own competency. Like don't sell yourself, way above your own level of where you feel comfortable. And you want to be aware of your client's impact on society. I think these are all new, which I think are really good. Are there any comments here? I'm noticing we only have 15 minutes and I've got a few more things. So I want to move on. Does anybody have a comment here? Beth, it looks like you're about to talk.
Yeah. What is IP? I don't know that acronym.
Intellectual property.
Okay, thanks.
Right. So whether it's software so here's a perfect example of that one. That's a great question. Is if you are showing a model, like I use a lot of different assessments, and if you are, whether it's recognizing a book or you have a PowerPoint and what you're sharing, like here's a simple example. I often have clients read Leadership and Self-Deception, and then I have slides that go with that. So it's clearly marked that that's their IP, not mine. Okay, anything else? Okay, again, these are all written out more thoroughly on the site if you want to read more about them. This was pretty similar. This is the pledge of ethics that we all take as a professional. So again, I'm not going to read that out loud, but basically if you are a coach and you're affiliating yourself with ICF, you are committing to these ethics that we just reviewed, which I think they're easy, right? Like, I don't know that there's any issue. And if there is, that's something you have to come to terms with yourself, I think. I can't think about, we just need to be straight. So about what's going on, because that's what we're teaching and supporting our clients to do. And so that's how we have to show up in the relationship. All right, any questions there? I'm going to move on. Okay. So I think the bottom line in terms of thinking about ethics is, are you serving your client? And that's true whether it's a sponsor or it's the coachee. We have to serve both of them. And I think that's where I check in with myself in terms of, am I being ethical as a coach? If I'm of service, if I'm straight, honest, authentic, organized, on their agenda, holding them to accountability, I'm serving them, and I don't think that I have to think about if I'm being ethical or not. It's just how coaching is done. Any comments about that? Yes, you can get copies of the slides, Linda. I've already sent them. Missy has them. So if you just write to admin, does everybody have that? The admin email address? Missy, will you put that email in the chat? How everybody gets in contact with you, and then you can send the slides. Okay, good. Okay, so let's share some perspective. Does anybody have an experience where you feel like you were challenged ethically in a coaching relationship and how you handled it? Does anybody have one of those that they feel really good about, or you're in the middle of right now? I mean, we already heard Linda's. Does anybody want to speak up? And we'll default to Jackie. I'll put her on the, because I'm sure she's been a coach a long time. Does anybody have anything they want to share that you had to deal with already, or you're dealing with now? Yep, Beth.
So I live in the Salt Lake area now. I used to live in Chicago, but anyway, my main area of coaching has been a recovery coach for families who have loved ones with addiction or mental health issues, helping them navigate that journey. And so often I connect with clergy people to let them know about what I do, etc. So I connected with this priest, and he kept giving me referrals, which was really nice. But in all cases, I just didn't feel like, I feel like these people needed a therapist. They weren't really coaching material. So what I did was I did research therapists for them and guided them that way. And then I did tell the priest that, that those weren't the kind of clients that I could really help, so it felt like, I kind of felt like I was being used by him a little bit. Like he didn't want to bother to talk to these people. So just hand them over to the life coach to do that. And I stopped that. So anyway,
That's a really good one, right? We have to educate people in terms of when we're a good referral. Yeah, that's a good one.
That's it.
That's good. Thank you, Beth. That's a really good example. And another one that I get that happens all the time is when people, because I'm a leadership coach and I get career coaching clients. And in the beginning, I tried to do that, and I'm like, I'm not a very good career coach. And so I refer, but same thing. Like, so, what happened with Beth is I had to explain, here's a good referral for me. I can send this on, but this is not what I do, right? That's good. All right, anybody else have one?
I once had a client who he agreed to coaching. His coaching was being paid for by his uncle who he lived with. And so in the beginning, I set up the boundaries and said to him, yes, your uncle's paying for this, but I'm not obligated to share any information with him. And so he said, no, that's okay. You can tell him anything. And I said, okay, so how about then you tell him what we talked about outside of our coaching? Because when he calls me, which he said he would, and I already told him I can't share information with you. So if that's a deal breaker, then that's fine. I'll give you your money back and we'll be done. And he said, no, that's fine. So it worked out that the nephew was able to tell his uncle what we talked about during the coaching and how it was helping him and those kinds of things, so that I didn't have to get involved, because that could have been very, very messy.
That's a really interesting slippery one also, when somebody else is paying, when it's a relative paying. I did that once or twice. I find that if people don't pay themselves, they don't, even if it's a low amount, they don't have the skin in the game. It's awkward. I mean, that's a tough one. So it sounds like you handled that very well. And I think we all have to have one or two of those weird ones to like learn. Like, oh, you don't want that again when it shows up. Right. Okay. So here's my thought is, do your own work as a coach. So be ethical in everything you do about your coaching practice. Be ethical in terms of the records that you keep. Be ethical in terms of like this referrals. This is good for me. Do you want to be paid for that? Be straight, like the straighter that you are. And if there's nothing that you're worried, oh, I'm not saying this, then you can check in with yourself. Like, do I have something I need to be saying? And then I've said this in previous calls that we've had, like, and this came out of going to a coaching conference one time. I heard a coach say, I made a commitment that I don't gossip anymore. And I thought, oh, I love that, right? Like, I don't want to be a gossip. And so if I ever do, I made that commitment as well. But if I am going to gossip, I'll preface it. So, you don't want to, I think ethically it's really good, just like we keep confidentiality with our clients, it's good to keep it with our friends. And, but I am much less of a gossip than I was, when I was a much younger person. It just feels good. I think it feels really good to be ethical. Okay. I put this in here all the time because I think in building our intuition is so important. How would you use and when would you use your intuition relative to ethics? Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, when you feel nervous, pay attention.
Right.
You get a
Listen to whatever
churning.
feelings you're having. Yeah.
Churning in your gut.
Right. And what's going on there? And you can vet that, right, with a peer, a coach.
Mhm.
Right. If you're staying awake at night, if you're worried about your client, right, anything, whether it doesn't feel right, it doesn't sound right, and vet it with your client, right? If you have a sense that something's off, speak up to your client. I mean, you're as a coach, you're in the position to be honest and support them. So anything that feels like, that doesn't sound right, ask, right? It's good coaching. All right, now I know we have 4 minutes left. Go ahead, who's talking?
Sherry, this is Sherry. I was just going to add to that anytime I find myself asking myself a question about, is this ethical? Should I be doing this? Does this feel right? That's just a sign for me to explore it further.
Right, that's good, right. If you can't decide, that's interesting, right? Vet that and figure it out. Okay, another resource that I wanted to give you guys, this is, and Missy, I don't know if you can grab that. Well, this is on the site. This is, if you go to ICF, there was a 30-minute presentation that the ICF Global Ethics Community Practice did. And so if you wanted to watch more about ethical concerns in coaching, I thought this was really good. And you can find it, and you can get 3 CEs for it. So if you're looking for CEs, that's on the ICF site. Last thing, for the, as you know this, for the people that are going to get certified, they're using the previous markers. And so for, the markers are the same for ethics. And it's funny, if you look on the site, they have markers. Like if you look at the PCC, I was looking at that yesterday, they do have markers for the 11, no, actually for 10 of them. And I didn't see this. I had gotten this from a previous year. So, but this is what I had for ethics. So it's really all about honoring the guidelines and the code that we just went through. And I had highlighted, if you are focused on the client's inquiry and exploration, that's what's important versus telling the client, right? That's, we would consider that unethical. So that's important in terms of your testing. All right, how about that? 2 minutes to go. Are there any questions or observations that people want to share about ethics?
Is there a resource at ICF that we can go to if we have ethical questions? Is there a person we can write to or ask? Or
That's a really good question. I don't know the answer to that. Do you, Jackie? Are you still on the call? I would think that you could write to, well, there's that committee that I mentioned in a previous slide. I would think that you could write to them. Right, do you remember that in the, if you were concerned, if you had an issue. I also think you could bring it up at an ICF meeting and discuss it, as long as you're maintaining confidentiality for your client. I mean, I might start with the Chicago chapter, the community that we have here. I know that's not, I hope that is helpful.
I think there's
Oh,
also
here.
There's a hotline.
There's a hotline.
Yeah, I just put
There's
it
a
in
hotline.
the chat.
All right, thank you, Anna Maria. I did not know that. So that's great. There is a hotline that's on the site. All right. All right, thank you to the people that are thanking me. We are done. If you want the slides, the email was in there, I think. Did everybody see that? And next month we'll be doing the next one. So thank you for coming. These were great questions, a lot to think about. But I you know, the one thing I will say, if it doesn't feel right, that last thing that we talked about, that's when you got to really pay attention. Right? Trust your gut. Keep that intuition high. Know the rules. All right, wait, we have a couple questions or comments. Good. All right, thank you. Missy, what about, will certificates be mailed and by when? Can you answer that, or Cheryl?
We usually send certificates out anywhere between 3 and 4 weeks after the presentation, and we will keep registration open until Monday. So in case you are here listening, you haven't registered, you still have the opportunity to register for those CCEUs.
All right, good. All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Susan. You did a great job. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you. It was fun.
Enjoy the rest
It's
of your
good
day.
stuff. I mean, it's what keeps us up at night if we have an issue. All right, have a great week, everybody. Stay safe and well.
Somebody asked, where did you register? You just go to icfchicago.org, the website, and under the calendar, click on the core competency call for October, and then you can register there.
And do they get 1 credit? Because it's 1 hour, right?
Yeah.
1 hour under core competencies. And if you're keeping track, is it 24 that we have to have in a year, or in a period of time, for the 3 years?
Yeah, I think so.
So doing that class online would give you 3 more, which would be good.
Yeah, that's what I did last year when I was going through my recertification. That was quick, easy, half an hour.
Right. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. All right. All right. Get outside and enjoy the weather. See you guys in a future month. Bye.
All right. Thank you again, Susan.
My pleasure.